So now we've been able to access this form data from our HTML page on our Django server, but all we're doing right now is accessing one input. And when we want a user to create a link, we want them to fill out multiple input fields. And so now we could go here and create a bunch of input fields, but that would be a pretty manual process, and it's a pretty common thing to want to do. So Django has came with a built-in solution that makes that a lot quicker, and they are called Django forms. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a forms.py file where we will actually create this form outside of the HTML. So we'll come back into our links app, create a new file and call it forms.py. And then we want to import from Django import forms. So this is a forms module that comes with Django. And now we just define a form class and we call this link form, and it inherits from this form class that comes with Django. And then on this class, we can specify attributes that will be fields on the form. So just like how in a model, we specified attributes that were fields on the model, this will be the same thing, but with forms. So we can say that we have a name input field that we want. So this will be a forms.car field, max length equals 50. We'll have a URL field, which is a URL field, which will have a max length of 200. And then finally, we want the slug, which is a slug field. And we specify that this is required equals false because we can auto-generate this from the name. So awesome. So now we've defined this link form. The next thing we want to do is actually display it in our template. And to do that, we need to update our view. So first we need to import that view that we just created. So below where we import the models, we can say from .forms import link form. So now we have access to this link form class. And in our add link view, we want to create an instance of this form and pass it into the template. So we can remove this print and we can just say form equals link form, and then create a context variable and say form equals form, and then pass in this context into this render function so we have access to it in the template. And so now we can access this link form inside of our template. So if we go back to our create.html, and instead of manually rendering out this input, we can just render the form like so. And so we still need to have this form HTML element. We still need to include this CSRF token, and we still need to include this submit button, but we are now able to get all of our input fields generated by Django. So if we click save, make sure the server's running, it's reloading, and check this out in the browser, and click refresh, we can see that we have all of these fields, the name, the URL, and the slug. But we need to update the view a bit more because when we first go to this page and send a GET request, we want to render this form with these fields, the name, URL, and slug. But when we fill them out and click create and send a post request, we actually want to get the data and save it as a new link. So let's go back to our text editor and go back to our views.py. And we want to add some logic that checks to see if this incoming request is a get or a post method. So we can say if request.method, so the method that's coming in, equals post, then we know that it's a post method that's coming, and that means that its form has data. And so we can instantiate this link form with this data that's coming in. So we say link form, and we pass in this request.post, which remember when we printed out before had the data that was in that form. And we need to check if this form is valid. So if it has valid data, then we can process the data. And we'll just print it out for now. So we could say form.cleaned data. And we'll say else. So if the request.method is not post, which in our case here, it will be a get, then we just want to instantiate a blank form, and we can keep this context being created at the top level. So in either case, we'll still have access to this form. If we click save and go back to our browser, click refresh and fill this out, my new link, we'll say https://www.google.com, and we'll say the slug is new link, and we click create, and we go back to our terminal. We can see here that we got this post request, and in here we see this clean data that we were printing out. So we have the name, my new link, the URL, and the slug. So we could access each of these items in this form.clean data dictionary and save them and create a new link in the database. But there's an even easier way to do this with Django using something called a model form, because this pattern is so common, creating a form for a model and saving it, that Django came with something built out of the box. And that's what we will dive into in the next video.